Generator's been something of a pioneer as a large, well-funded, branded hostel operation. How do you see your sector of the market going over the next few years?
I think the hostel sector is coming of age. It's been a long road, but I think we're now beginning to see a lot of investor interest. A lot of other groups are getting funding. There's generally a bit more appetite in the marketplace. We're going to see a long period, I think, of low interest rates. So there's a search for yield and a search for where to put money. And the hostel space is very attractive. It's attractive on a number of metrics like EBITDA per square metre. It's attractive in terms of appealing to the millennial audiences. And I think much as budget hotels 20 years ago, I think hostels are the new coming thing. So it's pleasing to see this asset class finally getting there.
Right. Andrew, you were speaking earlier about the attractiveness of hostels as an investment class and how you would actually place them as a more attractive investment than hotels. Can you talk us through why you think that is?
Sure, yeah. I mean, there's a number of characteristics of hostels which make them, in my view, very attractive from a bank lending perspective, which is underappreciated because hotels, which are the mainstay of bank lending in this area, in the hospitality area, are something they really understand and feel comfortable with. The difference in hostels and hotels is that hostels generally are break-even at much lower occupancy levels. There's much lower upfront costs and the margins are much higher. And if you compare that to hotels, it means that actually you could argue that it is a much better lending proposition than hotels. In other words, it's much less risky. But I think the banks, being conservative institutions, will take some time in order to be convinced of that argument.
Debbie, could you tell us a bit about how the nature of marketing to the youth and millennial travel markets is different from traditional travel marketing, how it's changing and the bewildering speed of that change?
It is bewildering speed, and I think many people don't appreciate how different the media consumption is of millennials. They're not just multi-platform, but they're combining platforms simultaneously, and they're also looking at different audiences at the same time. So it was interesting earlier today at the conference to see that statistic that 68% of millennials are influenced by bloggers, and I think a further similar number are influenced by social media. But they're also looking at new influencers like YouTube stars that the Generation X's and just don't even know exist. They're invisible to them. And it's understanding how those consumers of the future are now consuming media, which will be critical to the success of brands in the future. So they need to be mobile, they need to be understanding all of those new platforms, whether it's YouTube or WhatsApp or Twitter book now. All of those things are changing so fast. Brands need to be looking at them and trying to get ahead of the curve and testing them and just seeing how they work with their audiences.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the demographic that's using the hostel type product is actually going up in age as well? You're seeing older guests who may have stayed in a traditional hotel starting to experiment a bit more with these hybrid models?
Sure. I mean, I know when the older generation realise that there are conventional hotel bedrooms in a hostel, and that in fact it's not a building full of dormitories. It's got private single and double rooms. Then I think there's an acceptance of that hybrid model, and there's a willingness to try it out. Especially when so much of the limited service hotel stock in the wider market right across the world is quite formulaic, very susceptible to perhaps a more mundane experience.
And our attention spans getting shorter generally, clips getting more concentrated and intense as people want to spend less time and look at more clips.
Yeah, it's constantly going to be driven down even further. As I mentioned earlier, every second's got to mean something. So on the production side, if there's information that's not relevant, you will lose their attention throughout. So it is constantly getting shorter. And also the look and feel of a video has an influence on the duration. Certain groups we work with, the whole feel is a faster pace, it's more interactive. And then there's other aspects on the production side which also massively increases engagement, such as animation and motion graphics, which you can incorporate well with cutaway shots and get a lot of information in a very short space of time. And that's the key in coming back to a quality made video.
Okay, so you've got 2 properties in London. You've
Yeah.
got one soon to open in Amsterdam.
Yeah, not soon enough, but yeah.
Okay. I'm going to give you an imaginary £100 million to go out and find more sites. So where would they be and why?
Okay, so there's no barriers to entry or...
Anywhere you like.
Okay, then I would start with Paris, I would go to New York, I go to Rome, Dublin, Istanbul, and Copenhagen. And Madrid as well, I love Madrid.
Could you get all that for £100 million?
But I'm hoping
Top
that
3.
the top 3, I was hoping one would generate the cash for the other. That's what I was working on, especially New York and Paris. Top 3, realistically, really realistically, top 3. Paris, Rome, Copenhagen, I suppose.
We spoke about Paris last night. What is it about that particular market that makes you so keen
Oh,
to get in
it's
there?
so undersupplied. I feel that, and it's undersupplied, and it's got one of the highest tourist numbers going, between London and Paris. So it's a no-brainer if there was no barriers to entry.
Carl, you've recently secured some significant investment from Invesco. How does that expand Generator's horizons? Where will that take you in terms of new destinations, new properties?
That's right. We've got a 60 million euro facility to start really growing our brand, actually in 2 directions. One is we've got a lot of infill in Europe still to do, so we've got a busy pipeline of sites we're looking at in some capital cities. And the second place is North America. We've got 2 or 3 sites we're looking at there quite closely. So this is a very exciting investment in Generator and a vindication of the work we've been doing over the last few years in growing this brand.
Mm-hmm. And will the investment go purely on property acquisition, or are there systems and operations investment coming from that as well?
We've actually just recently upgraded our whole internet booking engine, and we're going to introduce a social mobile app as well next year, so we've got that already covered. So this is really to fund the pipeline of growth and put us into new markets. Looking both at freehold assets and leasehold assets, and trying to get the Generator brand to make the next leap forward. We've got 10 properties at the moment, so we're looking to get to about 15 in about 18 months' time.
Mm-hmm. We've seen a couple of big institutional investments in this sector, even in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a trend that's set to continue?
Oh, for sure. There's no question. And if you look at the dynamics of the hostel market, we've got demand clearly increasing. I mean, David this morning from Staywise presented a very, very coherent argument to that effect. Supply is not increasing at the same level. So from demand-supply characteristics, this is a very, very attractive sector. It's not of sufficient size right now to attract really major funding, but it is attracting institutional funding, what with the Invesco investment in Generator. Because the banks have lent a lot to Generator as well, so that is, if you like, an exception, but it's been always lending on real estate, so it's not quite what I was talking about, because it's real estate, and if it all goes bad, you can use it for something else. And of course, Meininger are putting together a big real estate fund as well with institutions. So there is evidence that there is institutional investment coming into the sector, and that will continue, but it's not really big enough to attract really mainstream real estate funds or other institutional investors, but it will be.
The hostel sector particularly is quite fragmented. There are a lot of small independent operators. When you look at what the likes of Generator and Meininger are doing, do you think that the big hotel chains will sit up and take notice of that and launch their own hostel/hybrid brands in the next few years?
I think they have to first overcome the interpretation of the revenue per available bed against the revenue per available room. But as we saw today, there are 2 organisations at least who have property management systems that they claim can manage both those dynamics quite effectively. And that's a major breakthrough for institutional acceptance. And with institutional acceptance comes the bigger brands entering that marketplace, probably with intentions to dominate that.
Which of these platforms would you say are the most influential on the travel behaviour of this generation? I mean, it used to be the Sunday supplements for my generation.
Yeah.
What are these guys looking to for their inspiration of where to go on their next trip?
I think the biggest inspirational tool is video. Where you find that video, it could be on a Vine, it could be on a hyperlapse, but YouTube and all the associated videos that are associated through YouTube are really influential, and it's the YouTubers who are driving the largest volumes and having the most influence and speaking directly to the youth in their bedrooms, on their laptops, like their best friend, telling them what to do, what to wear, where to travel. It's that personal one-on-one advice with the visuals to back it up, and video instantly connects with the heart and the mind and has a lot more impact than the written word or even a picture.